Record. Hello, Ryan. We're back.
Hey, we're back. That didn't take long.
Module 4, computing, the readings,
Yes.
and the writings and the projects. So,
Yes.
so this is divided into. I think I can zoom out on this. That's really very helpful. Web 1.0 and Web 2.0.
Yep.
Okay, and we're doing a terrible job of making this clearer. Someday I'll do it.
Well, hopefully students have it in front of them and they're reading along, we'll say.
Yeah. So, and there are, in this module, as in others, significant amount of reading. But there's also, I think, a pretty clear description of why we're asking you to read these and how we're asking you to talk about them and think about them.
Right.
And I love all of our modules, but we're really starting to get into the critical stuff that you need to have for this program. This is a core course in the degree, and if there's anything in the course you're going to pay attention to, it's this set of readings for Web 1.0 and Web 2.0.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, we sort of mentioned it in the, it actually makes, it's actually a good thing that we're sort of, as we mentioned, if you hadn't listened to the end of the previous modules podcast yet, we talked about how this is going to be a back to basics module in terms of theory, but that's a good thing too, because this is so important that focusing in on affordances and uses and grats within this module is going to really help lay a foundation for an understanding of how we communicate today.
Yeah. If you have to get the difference between Web 1.0 and Web 2.0, and those are kind of weird little terms that maybe don't have a lot of meaning, but I think you'll get the difference by the different questions that we ask. The Engelbart demos, watching them, 1968.
Yeah.
Just imagining that this is the first time that anybody watched, not anybody, but most people watching that demo understood the concept of a computer file.
Yes. Yeah. And so many other things like the networking going on, the mouse, like there's so many things. It's almost sublime to go through and look at, it's nicely broken up. You'll see that they sort of chunked out the demo into different sections. And, I very much encourage you to look at it, to watch it all. But it won't be hard if you ask me, because you click on one and you think, oh, let me just check out this little chunk here. Oh, he's talking about how the mouse is moving around, and it's riveting to me. Like,
I agree. It was, and that's really this core aspect of computing is the interface of the computer. And there's a photo essay. There's the mother of all demos. There's the whole Levy talks about the relationship between interface and documents. And this is all Web 1.0, so we're not even talking about the interface to the phone, to the smartphone, or to the tablets. We're way back into, like, not laptops, big computers that sat on the desk and had a separate monitor and a keyboard. And, but if you don't get that interface, you're really hard to exist and to be productive, I think, as a designer in today's world. So you've really got to focus in on that.
And obviously a lot of this stuff comes second nature. But like, I encourage you to think about the watershed momentness of it. That's obviously not a word, but when these technologies exist, are being invented and thought through and pioneered, that, like, there's a day before and then there's the day after. Like, think about how that, especially that's where you can get to your connections into the theory. And that can be both a sort of an affordance thing or using grats. You could take that in either direction. Is we didn't have this technology and now we do. What does that mean?
So I do want to draw your attention to the contribution to the reading list made by an absolutely brilliant scholar. No, that's me. I really hate to incorporate my own work, and it's kind of obnoxious to cite yourself, but we do it here, and that I must be from before you taught this class with me, Ryan. But we do it here for two reasons. One, because it actually is relevant, because it talks about some of these idealized notions of the utopian view of a network society was going to be. But secondly, and perhaps even more importantly, It happens to be, in my own view, a pretty good example of what a literature review looks like.
Yes.
12 to
Which
15.
is a very specific genre of writing that as graduate students you should start, if you're not already familiar with, you should start getting yourself familiar with, and yeah, it is a great example of how that works, what that means. And it isn't just citing sources and briefly discussing them. There's a lot more to a literature review than just what it sounds like.
There's a whole framework built on top of it, and then you use the literature to support the framework, and that's the contribution. So you read that to get a feel for what a literature review could look like. And so rather than saying, here's a really good literature review, I just happen to find one that's relevant to the class. So
Right.
And the other thing I like about this, the readings, at least in Web 1.0, actually in this whole module, I shouldn't say readings, the resources, we've got a timeline, we've got a museum exhibit, we've got videos, really using different kinds of sources as teaching mechanisms. So we do these podcasts, we don't do a lot of other teaching other than saying, look at these sources, but we actually selected these in particular because of multimedia.
Yes.
I love the set of brochures for selling personal computers that are on quote unquote on display in the computer museum, on display on the web. I mean, brochure. You wouldn't have thought that we're going to send you to look at brochures in a graduate class, but we do.
Right. Yeah, because they're incredibly illustrative. Like it's like peering back into knowing what people thought was important about selling, or it can be a window into the values of a society of the time, what features they thought that were going to be important, all that kinds
of stuff. And when you move on to Web 2.0, I can't emphasize enough how that Michael Wesch video is fabulous.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And it's just, it's something I aspire to as a scholar, to being able to create something like that. And it's something, and all of you guys could use that as a mechanism for creating a module or your assignment for this project or for this module there.
Right.
As a project for this module, you can basically emulate what Wesch does there.
Yeah.
We do talk about Web 2.0. It's a bunch of words, basically. It's not really a theory in a sense, but it's a bunch of words, and it's become so almost ubiquitous in discussion of technology these days that we forget that actually somebody thought of it, and that there was this divide between Web 1.0, which nobody ever called it that, and Web 2.0. And we're still waiting for Web 3.0. But do go through, and this is the original article, What is the Web 2.0 in 2005? And then we've got the Gleick chapter as well, and the Henry Jenkins chapter, I think really helps in pushing forward these ideas. And you want to get a sense of what is hypertextuality, and that's a really important notion, part of Web 2.0, as well as collaboration and spreadability. And so as you write these projects, I think we'd like to suggest that as a minimum part of your project, it would be critical to cite at least 3, 4, 5 of the sources that we've asked you to take a look at. And what we're really trying to understand is, can you take these sources to learn about Web 1.0 or Web 2.0 and then interpret them in the context of the readings from Module 1, uses and graphs or affordances?
Right.
It's hard for me to see how you do that without citing these sources. If you're finding that you're not using any of the readings, especially the ones from Module 1, you're not using any of those readings, you're not citing them, you may not be answering the question about how can you use one of those theories or both of those theories to explain how individuals encountered the web and computing in the early days, and then how they re-encountered the web and computing starting in the mid-2000s.
Yeah.
I think we've got to see citations to these readings.
I do too. Yeah. And I think that, if you're finding yourself, I almost want to say pick just a really back to basics. If you really want to do both affordances and uses and graphs, I suppose that works. I mean, because don't get me wrong, they connect well together nicely. Yeah. But if focusing in on one is also a very viable way. And if you can't figure out how to focus in on one because they tend to blur, that might mean you have to go back and reread some of those module one readings to really get a sense of the differentiation between the two. So really think through how your module one readings, your theory can apply and apply it directly to the readings that are in module 4, and then extend the thoughts of a particular aspect or aspects of Web 1.0 or Web 2.0.
And just to reiterate, if you find yourself writing a sentence, as I came across in one of the projects, that begins with the telephone or telephony did this, you're in the realm of affordance theory.
Right.
If you find yourself writing a sentence and saying is people who used the telephone did so because, you're in the realm of uses and grats.
Yep.
So if you look at your basic point, if your point starts with the technology and moves to the users, it's affordance. If you start with the users and move through the technology, it's uses and grats. It's a very simplified version, but keep that in mind. And I think that what I'm looking for in these next projects and what we're both looking for in these next projects is really nailing the theoretical approaches and integrating that into the readings that we've asked you to take a look at. And then building a project out of those readings that tells a story. It's a challenge. There's a lot of readings, but it's a pretty long module, so you've got plenty of time for this, I hope.
Yep, I agree. Yep.
So there we go.
Okay.
Enjoy the rest of the snowstorms, Ryan.
Yeah.
We'll see each other in Utica someday.
Maybe if we could ever dig out. I've heard that the parking lots there were pretty rough today. I'm not quite sure why they only canceled morning classes today.
Yeah, well, I don't have afternoon classes on a Wednesday, so here we are.
Yeah.
All right, listen, and we'll chat again after the next modules come in.
Yep, sounds good.
Take care. See you later.
Bye.
Bye now.
Okay, so stop recording.